Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So from now on, market updates are going to be done on Friday, which allows me to collect data over the week because we are going to be looking at more things. So let's go ahead and take a look at what is happening in the general market from volumes, rejections, diesel prices, capacity insights, ELP violation data, and then we'll go into specifics for flatbeds, reefers, and dry vans, what is happening on the spot market, how the spot market is changing week over week. Ready? Let's go. All right, first and foremost, we're going to be looking at the general overview. So in terms of general volume, which is the whole market, not just the spot market, that decreased week over week by 2.32%. General rejections on the whole market also decreased by 10.02%, bringing them down to 5.84% at the moment. Spot volumes also saw a decrease of about 7.6%, and spot rates in general for all equipment types decreased by about 4 cents per mile. All right, let's take a look at what's happening with diesel prices overview-wise. So diesel prices are currently increasing, unfortunately, week over week. They are about almost 1 cent more per gallon than last week. Month over month, they increased by almost 6 cents per gallon, although year over year, they're still about 10 cents per gallon cheaper than this time last year. So now let's take a look at the map. Again, all of these maps and the line graphs are going to be available on my website under the latest market data. So in terms of diesel price at the pump, we can see that as always, California, Oregon, and Washington are the most expensive in terms of the price at the pump. The East Coast is also pretty expensive, and it looks like Oklahoma as well as Mississippi are currently the cheapest. If you want to see the diesel price less IFTA, again, it's going to be under the website where you can play around with the map. All right, in terms of capacity, I decided to start making my own charts using FMCSA data. So you can see it's divided by week. Week 30th is this week, and we can see that the total authorities gained went down from the previous week. The total authorities lost also went down. It's a negative number, so it's an inverse relationship. The higher it is, the less authorities we lost, which means that net carriers have also gone down. Currently, we're seeing that the net carriers are about 17 gained, right? And if you want to see a chart that is a little bit more clear, you can see that last week there were about 200 gained. Now, there is a discrepancy between my data and Sonar's because I calculate from Friday to Thursday. I remove any Canadian authorities, any broker authorities, any permits, and it's only carriers in the United States. So 17 gained this week. All right, now let's focus on ELP out of service data, how many out of service orders have been issued over time. And as you can see, the data is as of July 23rd, and July 23rd actually saw the highest amount of out of service orders issued for the lack of English language proficiency. The trend looks to be going up. But the real question is, what is the percentage, right? If we remove border zone carriers who are actually not supposed to get out of service orders, they can get violations. And if we take a look at the data and just compare how many violations were issued versus how many out of service orders were issued, you can see on July 23rd, it was only about 60%. There have been moments where it hit 100% since June 25th. But yeah, as of 2 days ago, it was only 60%. So all the other carriers just got a violation, not an out of service order. All right, let's look at some maps regarding capacity and out of service data, starting with the out of service heat map, which I will be updating every single month. This is the map as of July 3rd. You can see that most out of service orders for ELP happen in Wyoming, followed by Tennessee and Texas, right? There are certain states that do not, it seems so far, and a lot of people are saying that do not place folks out of service, and that state is California. But we'll see as the data starts coming out. Now, in terms of authorities, where are the authorities being issued most? Texas by far is the place that has the most number of MCs being issued constantly, followed by California, Florida, and Illinois. And this data I update pretty much every single day. All right, let's take a look at what's happening for dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds on the spot market. This data is by FTR Intel. So let's go ahead and take a look. In terms of dry vans, they saw a 4 cent per mile decrease week over week. The rate year over year is about 2.6% lower on the spot market. Volumes fell by 8.4%, and year over year volumes for dry vans are 6% lower. So now you're going to see how the volumes have changed week over week. On top, you can see a slider last week, July 16th versus July 25th, right, versus today. And what you can see is that volumes decreased on the spot market for dry vans, obviously. Now, if you take a closer look, you can see that most volumes still come out of Texas and California. Now, what about the load to truck ratio? Load to truck ratio changed week over week. You can see it became a little bit lighter. Wyoming and South Dakota became lighter. But currently, as of right now, we can see that the places with a better load to truck ratio, and again, you can interact with this map and see what exactly it is. The loads with a better load to truck ratio are California, South Carolina, New Jersey, but be careful in those states because they might be surrounded by overcapacity, which means deadheading trucks diluting the situation. All right, so now let's take a look at what's happening with those reefers. Reefers also saw a 4 cent per mile decrease week over week on the spot market. Rates are about 1% lower than this time last year. Volumes week over week fell by 13.5% on the spot market, and they are 17% lower than this time last year. And this map shows it that last week it was darker, this week it's lighter, volumes are going down, but nevertheless, most volumes from reefers come out of California, Texas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, as well as some in Georgia. Now, in terms of load to truck ratios, we can see that the load to truck ratios changed quite a bit, right? In certain areas, they got darker, like North Dakota, South Dakota. In certain areas, like Arkansas, they got lighter. So yeah, definitely changes. Delaware is one of those places, I think it has 8.5 loads per truck, if I'm not mistaken, but it's surrounded by overcapacity. Again, those deadheading trucks will mess up that situation. But yeah, take a look at those maps. And the most important thing I can tell you is compare the load to truck ratio map to the volume map, right? Because a place like North Dakota, for example, high load to truck ratio. However, there are not enough loads there. So you are kind of at the mercy of will something come out or will it not? Okay, finally, we have flatbeds. Flatbeds, just like reefers and dry vans, saw also a 4 cent per mile decrease on the spot market week over week. Year over year, the rates are about 0.4% lower. Volumes dropped by 5.4% week over week on the spot market for flatbeds, but they're still 21% higher than this time last year. Now, if we take a look at the load map and how it has changed, definitely we can see that volumes are dwindling away. Nevertheless, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, California, actually Florida as well, and Georgia, they have more loads for those flatbeds or open deck trailers, but Texas is by far the most populated with loads. Now, in terms of load to truck ratios, same thing as with other equipment types, they got worse. You can see the map is getting lighter, although a place like Washington got slightly darker for flatbeds, which means the load to truck ratio is improving. It's becoming better for flatbeds there. But nevertheless, just like every week, Mississippi is the one with the highest load to truck ratio. But in general, it's Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Now, in terms of data versus experience, I had an interesting week because one of my trucks ended up in the Rockies, right? It was like Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado. But nevertheless, we managed to get really, really good rates because just for this week, considering that we ended up in a really bad area, I decided to completely ignore where the loads are going. I was just booking the highest possible gross and rate per mile. So sometimes this is the only way to make it work. If you're stuck in a dead area where the deadhead is absolutely insane and the next load is not going to cover the deadhead, for us, what we did, again, is just stop looking at where the loads are going. We kept booking from bad area to bad area, but for a higher rate per mile and for a higher gross, which worked out. Now, the end of the week was very tough, of course, because once that weekend load needs to be booked, you need to find something that not only covers the weekend, but also pays well, which is pretty hard to do from a dead area. So that took a long time to book. But yeah, guys, I hope you like the new format of the market update. If you have any questions, let me know. But other than that, I am curious to hear how your week went, and I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.